What happens when Hollywood spends millions making movies audiences no longer want? During the 1960s, studios built giant sets, hired enormous casts, and produced films so expensive that even packed theaters could not save them. These 20 movies did not simply disappoint. Together, they helped expose how badly Hollywood had lost touch with its audience. Before the financial disasters begin, please like this video and share it, and subscribe to the channel, because the most unbelievable Hollywood failures are still ahead. Number 20. The Alamo, 1960. John Wayne wanted the Alamo to be more than a Western. He wanted it to be a huge patriotic monument that audiences would remember for generations. Unfortunately, monuments are expensive, and this one became a dangerous personal gamble. The story takes place during the Texas Revolution. Colonel William Travis, frontiersman Jim Bowie, and legendary fighter Davy Crockett gather inside the Alamo mission while a much larger Mexican army approaches. They know help may not arrive, but their resistance could give General Sam Houston enough time to prepare another force. John Wayne played Crockett and also directed the film. Richard Widmark portrayed Bowie, while Lawrence Harvey appeared as Travis. Wayne demanded enormous battle scenes, thousands of costumes, artillery, horses, and a full-scale Alamo compound constructed in Texas. The production reportedly cost around $12 million, an extraordinary figure for 1960. The film's most memorable sequence is its extended final assault. Soldiers advance through smoke as cannons fire from the mission walls. One defender after another realizes that the position cannot be held, yet nobody abandons it. The scene is huge, emotional, and clearly designed to justify every dollar visible on screen. But the domestic box office reached only about $7. Wayne had invested heavily and was forced to sell his rights to protect himself financially. Television sales eventually helped the picture earn money, but its original theatrical performance was a painful warning. Even John Wayne's name could not automatically rescue an oversized production. Number 19. Scent of Mystery, 1960. Some Hollywood failures begin with a bad story. Scent of Mystery began with an idea that sounded brilliant inside a conference room. What if audiences could smell the movie? The film follows an English visitor named Oliver Larker, played by Denholm Elliott, who witnesses an attempted attack while traveling through Spain. He joins a taxi driver, played by Peter Lorre, and begins searching for the mysterious woman who appears to be the next target. Their most important clue is not something they see. It is the distinctive perfume surrounding her. Producer Mike Todd Jr. introduced a process called smell-o-vision. Special equipment installed inside theaters released different scents at carefully selected moments. Viewers were supposed to smell bread, wine, smoke, perfume, and other odors connected to the mystery. The perfume sequence was meant to be the great interactive moment. As the unidentified woman moved through the story, her fragrance entered the auditorium, allowing the audience to recognize a clue before the characters completely understood it. In practice, the smells reportedly arrived late, mixed together, or failed to reach every seat. Some viewers heard distracting sniffing noises from other audience members. Installing the system could cost roughly $25 to $30 per seat at a time, when a movie ticket cost less than $1. The picture cost around $2 million, but earned only about $300,000 in North American rentals. Smell-o-vision quickly disappeared, leaving Scent of Mystery remembered less as a thriller and more as one of Hollywood's strangest technological experiments. Hollywood had survived 1960, but the spending had only begun. Enjoying these forgotten Hollywood stories? Give the video a like and tell us which disaster surprised you most. Subscribe now, because the next production nearly consumed Marlon Brando's career. Number 18. One-Eyed Jacks, 1961. Marlon Brando was already famous for being intense, unpredictable, and completely committed to his performances. When he took control of One-Eyed Jacks, that same commitment turned a Western into a production nightmare. Brando plays Rio, a bank robber who escapes across Mexico with his partner, Dad Longworth, played by Karl Malden. When the two men become trapped, Dad promises to find fresh horses. Instead, he abandons Rio and saves himself. Years later, Rio escapes prison and discovers that Dad has become a respected sheriff in Monterey. Rio arrives pretending that he has forgotten the betrayal, but revenge remains his real purpose. The situation becomes more complicated when he falls for Dad's stepdaughter, Luisa. Suddenly, Rio must decide whether he wants a new life or whether hatred will control him. One of the film's most powerful scenes comes when Dad publicly punishes Rio, destroying his confidence and leaving him physically weakened. Their conflict finally erupts in a tense town confrontation, where neither man can continue hiding behind his carefully created image. Stanley Kubrick was originally attached to direct, but Brando eventually took over. He reportedly shot enormous amounts of footage and repeatedly changed scenes while filming. The schedule expanded, and the budget rose to roughly $6 million. The film earned around $4.3 million in North American rentals, making it a commercial disappointment. Today, many critics admire its unusual pacing, coastal photography, and morally complicated characters. But in 1961, Paramount saw an expensive Western that had taken too long, cost too much, and failed to recover its investment. Number 17. The Misfits, 1961. The Misfits brought together Marilyn Monroe, Clark Gable, Montgomery Clift, Eli Wallach, director John Huston, and playwright Arthur Miller. With that collection of talent, failure seemed impossible. Instead, the production became emotionally exhausting, financially disappointing, and historically heartbreaking. Monroe plays Rosalind Tabor, a recently divorced woman trying to rebuild her life in Nevada. She meets aging cowboy Gay Langland, played by Gable, and troubled mechanic Guido, played by Wallach. Montgomery Clift appears as Perce, a rodeo rider carrying emotional scars of his own. The men decide to capture wild mustangs and sell them for commercial use. Rosalind initially imagines the roundup as an adventure, but she becomes horrified when she understands what will happen to the animals. The Mustang sequence remains the film's unforgettable centerpiece. Gable fights desperately with ropes, while horses struggle across the dry landscape. Rosalind screams for the men to stop, and the romantic image of the American cowboy collapses into something lonely and outdated. What is happening is not simply an animal roundup. It is the destruction of an entire way of life. The production cost around $4 million and earned roughly the same amount at the domestic box office, which was not enough after distribution and advertising expenses. It became commercially successful only through later releases and home viewing. More sadly, it became the final completed movie for both Gable and Monroe. Gable died shortly after filming, while Monroe died before completing another feature. A movie about people searching for a place in a changing world became an accidental farewell to two Hollywood legends. Number 16. Mutiny on the Bounty, 1962. MGM believed Mutiny on the Bounty would be the next great prestige adventure. Instead, the studio received delays, arguments, changing directors, rising costs, and one of the decade's most famous financial disappointments. Marlon Brando plays Fletcher Christian, an officer aboard the British ship HMS Bounty. Trevor Howard portrays Captain William Bligh, a skilled navigator whose cruel discipline creates growing anger among the crew. Their mission is to sail to Tahiti, collect breadfruit plants, and deliver them to the Caribbean. Life in Tahiti gives the sailors a brief experience of freedom. When Bligh forces them back onto the ship, Christian can no longer accept his command. The crew seizes control of the Bounty and places Bligh and his loyal men inside a small open boat. The mutiny sequence is the film's great dramatic moment. Christian stands on deck, surrounded by frightened sailors, while Bligh refuses to show weakness. The scene works because both men understand that there can be no return. One has destroyed his naval career, while the other faces an almost impossible journey across open water. Production problems were equally dramatic. Brando's changing ideas and working methods contributed to delays. Location filming became difficult, and a full-size replica of the Bounty added further expense. The budget eventually reached approximately $19 million. Although the movie became one of the year's higher-grossing releases, its rentals were nowhere near enough to cover the cost. Reports suggested it needed around $30 million to break even. MGM suffered a major annual loss, proving that a film could attract millions of viewers and still become a financial failure. Number 15. The Wonderful World of the Brothers Grimm, 1962. Hollywood had another expensive weapon in 1962, Cinerama. The process promised enormous curved screen images that television could never reproduce. The Wonderful World of the Brothers Grimm was designed to turn that technology into a family attraction. The movie presents a fictionalized story about Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm. The brothers are supposed to complete a serious historical project for a wealthy employer, but Wilhelm cannot stop collecting local folk stories. His imagination repeatedly interrupts their practical responsibilities. Those stories become colorful fantasies inside the larger film. A princess secretly dances every night, a poor cobbler receives mysterious assistance, and a brave young man faces a strange creature in The Singing Bone. The stop-motion dragon is the sequence many viewers remember best. The creature may appear charmingly artificial today, but on a giant Cinerama screen it was intended to overwhelm children. It twists through the frame while the hero tries to outsmart it, turning the brothers' quiet storytelling into physical spectacle. The problem was that Cinerama required 3 synchronized projectors and specially equipped theaters. The complicated format limited where the film could play. Critics also found the mixture of biography, musical numbers, and fairy tales uneven. The movie earned about $6.5 million in rentals and needed approximately twice that amount to become profitable. Its spectacular presentation could not hide the basic problem. Hollywood had built an expensive attraction for a relatively small number of theaters. The film later became difficult to see because its three-panel Cinerama elements required major restoration. What was created as a massive audience event eventually became a rarely screened curiosity from an era when technology was expected to save Hollywood. Number 14. 55 Days at Peking, 1963. Producer Samuel Bronston specialized in movies that looked too large to fail. For 55 Days at Peking, he reconstructed sections of Imperial China in Spain, hired thousands of performers, and turned a historical siege into an enormous international spectacle. The story takes place during the Boxer Rebellion in 1900. Foreign diplomats and civilians become trapped inside the International Legation District of Peking. Charlton Heston plays American Marine Major Matt Lewis, while David Niven portrays British diplomat Sir Arthur Robertson. Ava Gardner appears as a Russian baroness, caught between personal survival and unexpected responsibility. As the Boxers and Imperial forces surround the compound, the different foreign groups must cooperate. Food becomes limited, defenses weaken, and the possibility of rescue grows more uncertain. The major siege sequence is the movie's central attraction. Barricades shake under artillery fire, while defenders race across rooftops and narrow walls. Flags from several nations hang above the compound, creating an image of temporary unity inside complete chaos. The audience understands that every blast is reducing the defenders' time. Behind the scenes, the production was almost as unstable. Director Nicholas Ray became ill and did not complete the picture. Guy Green and Andrew Martin reportedly handled portions of the remaining work without full credit. The budget reached about $10 million, with millions more required for advertising and distribution. Its reported gross was roughly equal to its production cost, which did not mean the studio had recovered its investment. Theaters kept a portion of ticket sales, while marketing and distribution expenses remained unpaid. Bronston's empire of historical epics was beginning to weaken. Giant sets could still impress audiences, but they could no longer guarantee a profit. Number 13. Cleopatra, 1963. Calling Cleopatra a normal box office bomb is slightly misleading. It became the highest-grossing film of 1963, and eventually earned a profit. But at the time of release, its gigantic cost created such a financial crisis that 20th Century Fox came dangerously close to collapse. Elizabeth Taylor plays Cleopatra, the intelligent and politically ambitious ruler of Egypt. She first forms an alliance with Julius Caesar, played by Rex Harrison, hoping to secure her throne and protect Egypt. After Caesar's fall, she becomes connected to Mark Antony, played by Richard Burton, as Rome divides itself through political rivalry. The film's most famous scene is Cleopatra's entrance into Rome. A gigantic procession moves through the city, as dancers, soldiers, animals, banners, and musicians surround a towering golden sphinx. Cleopatra appears above the crowd, forcing Rome to witness her wealth and power. It remains one of the most extravagant entrances ever filmed. Unfortunately, the production itself became even more dramatic. An early attempt to shoot in Britain was abandoned after Taylor became seriously ill. The project moved to Rome, sets were rebuilt, directors changed, and the schedule expanded. Public attention surrounding Taylor and Burton added more pressure. The complete production and marketing cost reportedly reached around $44 million, making it the most expensive film ever produced at that time. Fox sold property, reduced other productions, and dismissed employees while trying to survive the financial strain. The movie eventually earned enough through worldwide releases and later sales to become profitable, but its initial performance could not immediately cover the bill. Cleopatra proved that even the year's biggest hit could behave like a bomb when Hollywood allowed spending to escape every limit. Number 12. The Fall of the Roman Empire, 1964. The title sounded prophetic. The fall of the Roman Empire was meant to display Hollywood's power, but its failure helped damage the career of producer Samuel Bronston and weaken the expensive historical epic formula. The story begins during the rule of Marcus Aurelius, played by Alec Guinness. The emperor believes his unstable son Commodus, played by Christopher Plummer, should not inherit Rome. Instead, he considers choosing the respected general Livius, played by Stephen Boyd. When Marcus Aurelius dies, Commodus takes control. His leadership becomes increasingly selfish and destructive. Livius remains loyal to Rome but finds himself opposing the man who now controls it. Sophia Loren plays Lucilla, the emperor's daughter and the woman caught emotionally between them. The climactic confrontation between Commodus and Livius is the movie's most powerful spectacle. They fight before a gigantic reconstruction of the Roman Forum, while citizens watch their empire's political crisis become a personal contest. The scene suggests that Rome is no longer ruled by law or responsibility, but by ego. The sets were enormous. The reconstructed Forum reportedly became one of the largest outdoor sets ever built. Thousands of costumes, horses, soldiers, and complicated action sequences pushed the budget to approximately $16 million. Domestic returns were painfully low, with reported American grosses of only about $4.8 million. Even foreign revenue could not make the film a success. Ironically, the movie's serious tone and political themes have earned greater respect over time. It was not merely showing Rome falling through invasion, it showed an empire rotting from decisions made at the top. In financial terms, however, it also showed Hollywood doing exactly the same thing. Number 11. Circus World, 1964. Samuel Bronston's financial problems became even worse with Circus World, a movie that combined John Wayne, European locations, elaborate circus performances, and one enormous disaster sequence. Wayne plays Matt Masters, the owner of a traveling American circus. He takes his show to Europe, partly because he hopes to find Lily Alfredo, a former performer who disappeared years earlier. Lily is the mother of Tony, Matt's adopted daughter, played by Claudia Cardinale. Rita Hayworth appears as the missing woman, whose return could reopen old emotional wounds. The circus travels by ship, carrying animals, equipment, performers, and the company's financial future. Then the vessel overturns in Barcelona harbor. The shipwreck is the movie's most memorable scene. Crowds panic as cages, wagons, and performers slide across the deck. Matt desperately tries to rescue his people, while the entire circus disappears into the water. What is happening in the story is also symbolic. His carefully built world is sinking in front of him. Matt refuses to surrender and begins rebuilding the show, but the picture never finds a clear balance between family drama, romance, Western heroism, and circus spectacle. The production cost an estimated $9 million. North American rentals reportedly reached only around $1.6 million. Director Henry Hathaway later described making the movie as a mistake. The failure also hurt Bronston, whose company had invested heavily in gigantic international productions. His method depended on every new epic generating enough income to support the next. When several pictures disappointed, the entire structure began falling apart. Circus World tried to celebrate a showman rebuilding after disaster. Behind the camera, its producer was experiencing a disaster from which his company would not recover. Number 10. The Greatest Story Ever Told, 1965. By 1965, expensive biblical epics were beginning to feel like messages from another Hollywood era. Yet The Greatest Story Ever Told attempted to become the biggest and most respectful screen presentation of the life of Jesus. Max von Sydow plays Jesus, beginning with his early ministry and continuing through his teachings, final days, and resurrection. The supporting cast contains an extraordinary collection of famous performers, including Charlton Heston, Claude Rains, Dorothy McGuire, Jose Ferrer, Telly Savalas, and John Wayne. Director George Stevens approached the material with enormous seriousness. Vast American landscapes were used to represent biblical locations, and almost every scene was staged with the weight of a religious painting. The Sermon on the Mount is one of the film's most memorable sequences. Jesus stands before a growing crowd as people spread across the landscape, listening in silence. Another famous moment arrives near the conclusion, when John Wayne appears briefly as the Roman centurion who recognizes the importance of what has happened. The production cost around $20 million. The movie was released as a long roadshow presentation, but its slow pacing and extended running time limited the number of daily screenings. After its first year, worldwide earnings were reported at approximately $12.1 million. Estimates suggested the movie needed between $35 and $38 million to recover its complete cost. United Artists was forced to write off a large portion of the investment. The film received several Academy Award nominations and continues to attract viewers who appreciate its sincere approach. Financially, however, it discouraged studios from attempting similarly expensive biblical productions. Hollywood had assumed that a sacred subject, famous cast, and massive landscapes would guarantee attendance. Audiences proved that respect for a story did not automatically create demand for a 4-hour roadshow. Number 9. Lord Jim, 1965. Lord Jim looked like the kind of movie old Hollywood understood perfectly. A major literary adaptation, an international star, distant locations, enormous sets, and a story about courage and redemption. The problem was that audiences were losing interest in prestige adventures that arrived with prestige-sized bills. Peter O'Toole plays Jim, a young British officer serving aboard the Patna, a ship carrying hundreds of pilgrims. When the vessel appears ready to sink, Jim panics and abandons it with several officers. The ship survives, and his decision becomes publicly known. Unlike the other officers, Jim accepts responsibility. He loses his professional standing and travels from place to place, searching for a way to recover his self-respect. His opportunity arrives in Patusan, where local people are being controlled by a ruthless warlord. Jim helps lead a resistance and becomes a respected protector. But one final mistake forces him to decide whether redemption means surviving or accepting responsibility again. A major action sequence shows Jim guiding explosives toward the enemy's stronghold while under attack. The moment gives him a chance to perform the courageous act he could not perform aboard the Patna. O'Toole plays the scene less like a fearless hero and more like a man desperately trying to change his own memory. The movie was filmed in difficult international locations, including Cambodia. Its reported budget reached approximately $12 million, while North American rentals totaled around $5 million. Critics admired parts of the production but questioned its length and distant emotional tone. Audiences who had embraced O'Toole in Lawrence of Arabia did not respond with the same enthusiasm. Jim spends the film trying to overcome one costly failure. Columbia Pictures discovered that its expensive attempt to tell his story had created another. Number 8. Khartoum, 1966. Khartoum was created as an intelligent historical epic rather than a simple action film. It had impressive photography, large battle scenes, and 2 respected stars. It also arrived when expensive imperial adventures were becoming increasingly difficult to sell. Charlton Heston plays British General Charles Gordon, who is sent to Sudan during the uprising led by Muhammad Ahmad, known as the Mahdi, and played by Laurence Olivier. Gordon is ordered to evacuate Egyptian forces and civilians from Khartoum, but he becomes determined to defend the city. The conflict is presented as both military and personal. Gordon believes his position carries a moral duty. The Mahdi believes he is fulfilling a spiritual and political mission. Neither man is prepared to abandon his path. Their private meeting is the film's most famous scene. Gordon and the Mahdi sit across from one another, speaking politely, while recognizing that thousands of lives depend on their disagreement. There is no large battle in the moment, but the tension is stronger than cannon fire, because both men know the siege will continue. The final attack shows Khartoum's defenses collapsing, while the long-awaited British relief expedition remains too far away. Gordon walks toward his fate as soldiers enter the city, completing a tragedy the audience has been warned about from the beginning. The production cost somewhere between $6 and $8 million. North American rentals were reported at only about $3 million. Critical reaction was mixed, and the film failed to become a major commercial attraction. Today, Khartoum is often admired for its widescreen photography and serious performances, although some casting and makeup choices have aged badly. At the box office, it demonstrated that intelligence and spectacle could not rescue a historical epic from changing audience tastes. Number 7. What Did You Do in the War, Daddy? 1966. Director Blake Edwards attempted to turn the Second World War into an absurd comedy with What Did You Do in the War, Daddy? The timing could hardly have been more difficult. American audiences were watching another war unfold on television, making military farce a complicated product to sell. James Coburn plays Lieutenant Christian, whose American unit receives orders to capture the Italian village of Valerno. The soldiers expect resistance, but the Italian commander is willing to surrender on one condition. Everyone must first complete the village's football match and annual wine festival. The Americans agree, and the supposed invasion becomes a celebration. Problems begin when aerial observers mistake the drunken festival for a real battle. German troops then arrive, forcing the Americans and Italians to create increasingly ridiculous plans. The most memorable sequence is the false battle surrounding the festival. Explosions, dancing, uniforms, wine barrels, and confused soldiers fill the streets. From a distance, it looks like a major military engagement. Inside the village, almost nobody understands which side is officially fighting. Edwards reportedly warned that the public mood might not favor an expensive war comedy, but production continued. Elaborate sets were constructed, night sequences became complicated, and the budget grew to approximately $7 million. North American rentals reached only around $2.65 million. United Artists reportedly suffered a loss of several million dollars. The film has clever visual ideas and the kind of controlled chaos Edwards handled beautifully in other comedies. But audiences did not arrive in sufficient numbers. Its title asks what the characters did during the war. For the studio accountants, the answer was simpler. They spent $7 million making a comedy that the public largely chose not to see. Number 6. Dr. Dolittle, 1967. If one film represents old Hollywood's inability to understand the late 1960s, it may be Dr. Dolittle. While young audiences were discovering The Graduate, Bonnie and Clyde, and more challenging international cinema, Fox spent millions teaching Rex Harrison to speak with animals. Harrison plays Dr. John Dolittle, a physician who prefers animals to people. With assistance from his parrot, Polynesia, he learns hundreds of animal languages. His unusual ability eventually sends him on a journey to locate the legendary Great Pink Sea Snail. The movie contains colorful creatures, elaborate musical numbers, remote locations, and the two-headed Push Me Pull You. Its best-known scene is Talk to the Animals, in which Doolittle celebrates communication across species. Another unforgettable image arrives when the gigantic pink sea snail appears, offering a spectacular solution to the character's journey home. Behind the scenes, working with animals created constant delays. Unpredictable weather damaged location filming, while creative disagreements and Rex Harrison's strong opinions complicated production. The project expanded into a nearly 3-hour roadshow musical. Its budget reached approximately $17 million. The film earned around $9 million at the domestic box office, producing only about $6.2 million in rentals for Fox. Studio estimates later placed the loss above $11 million. Fox aggressively campaigned for awards, and the film received a Best Picture nomination, a decision that remains controversial among film historians. It won Oscars for its visual effects and the song Talk to the Animals. Financially, however, the doctor could not cure the studio. The same company that had struggled through Cleopatra had once again approved a gigantic production based on the belief that families would automatically support an expensive musical spectacle. Number 5. The Happiest Millionaire, 1967. Walt Disney's The Happiest Millionaire was filled with songs, dancing, colorful sets, and eccentric family comedy. But its title did not describe the people responsible for calculating the film's theatrical returns. The story is told partly through John Lawless, an Irish immigrant who becomes the butler of wealthy Philadelphia businessman Anthony J. Drexel Biddle. Fred MacMurray plays Biddle as an energetic millionaire, fascinated by boxing, religion, military preparedness, and the alligators he keeps inside his mansion. Biddle's daughter Cordy wants to leave home and attend boarding school. She eventually falls in love with Angier Buchanan Duke, the heir to another wealthy family. Their possible marriage creates a clash between two proud households, while Lawless watches the confusion and speaks directly to the audience. One of the film's most memorable comic ideas involves Biddle's pet alligators. Visitors enter an elegant millionaire's home, only to discover dangerous reptiles occupying the conservatory. The sequence represents the entire movie: expensive, strange, cheerful, and much less controlled than it first appears. The production cost roughly $5 million and was originally prepared as a lengthy roadshow attraction. Disney repeatedly cut the running time after early screenings, creating several different versions. North American rentals were also reported at around $5 million. That figure was not pure profit. It represented the distributor's portion before the complete expense of production, advertising, and distribution had been recovered. The movie was not the catastrophic loss created by Dr. Dolittle, but it was a major disappointment for a family musical built on the Disney name. It also became the final live-action film personally supervised by Walt Disney before his death. The studio intended to create another grand family classic. Instead, it produced evidence that even Disney could no longer depend on the old musical formula. By 1967, new movies were speaking to younger audiences, while old Hollywood was still singing inside expensive mansions. Number 4. Star, 1968. After the worldwide success of The Sound of Music, Fox believed Julie Andrews could carry another giant musical. The result was Star, an expensive biography whose title sounded more confident than its box office performance. Andrews plays real-life stage performer Gertrude Lawrence. The film follows her journey from an unstable childhood to music hall appearances, Broadway success, international fame, complicated romances, and friendship with playwright Noel Coward. The story is presented as Lawrence watches a documentary about her own life, interrupting whenever she dislikes the way events are being described. This structure allows the movie to move between private memories and giant theatrical performances. Its most famous production number is The Saga of Jenny. Andrews performs in an elaborate costume, while dancers, platforms, and shifting stage designs surround her. The number displays the skill, expense, and technical control behind the movie. It also reveals the central problem: the musical performances often feel more alive than the dramatic story connecting them. The budget reached approximately $14.3 million. Fox promoted the film as an important roadshow event, expecting audiences who loved Maria von Trapp to follow Andrews into a more complicated role. They did not. Worldwide earnings were reported at around $10 million, while North American rentals reached only approximately $4.2 million. Estimates suggested the film finished more than $10 million below its break-even target. Fox later shortened and re-released it under the title Those Were the Happy Times, but the new version did not reverse its reputation. Julie Andrews remained admired, and the film contains impressive craftsmanship. Yet Star proved that a beloved performer could not automatically sell every oversized musical. Hollywood had mistaken affection for one character as unlimited demand for an expensive formula. Number 3. The Shoes of the Fisherman, 1968. MGM expected The Shoes of the Fisherman to attract audiences through religion, global politics, and the star power of Anthony Quinn. Instead, it became another respected-looking production that could not recover its heavy cost. Quinn plays Kirill Lakota, a Ukrainian Catholic archbishop, released after years inside a Soviet prison. He travels to Rome and is unexpectedly elevated to cardinal. When the Pope dies, the cardinals enter a conclave to select a successor. After repeated ballots fail, Lakota becomes the unexpected choice. He accepts the position and becomes Pope Kirill I, carrying the emotional burden of his imprisonment into one of the world's most powerful institutions. The conclave is among the movie's most memorable sequences. The cardinals sit beneath solemn architecture, while votes are counted, and smoke communicates failure to the waiting crowd. Lakota does not campaign for authority. He appears increasingly uncomfortable as authority moves toward him. Outside the Vatican, a food crisis threatens China, creating the possibility of international conflict. The new pope eventually makes a radical decision. He offers the material wealth of the church to help prevent famine and war. The final public address in St. Peter's Square is the picture's grandest moment. Thousands look upward as the pope announces that religious leadership must require sacrifice rather than ceremony. The movie cost approximately $6.7 million. It became a notable box office disappointment, and together with other expensive MGM releases, it failed to recover enough money to protect the studio from increasing corporate pressure. The picture was thoughtful and visually polished, but younger viewers were turning towards smaller and more personal films. MGM had offered a solemn international epic at the exact moment audiences were making Easy Rider a cultural phenomenon. Number 2. Paint Your Wagon, 1969. Only old Hollywood could look at Clint Eastwood and Lee Marvin and decide that audiences desperately wanted to hear them sing. Paint Your Wagon became one of the strangest and most expensive Western musicals ever attempted. The story begins during the California Gold Rush. Lee Marvin plays prospector Ben Rumson, who discovers gold while burying a stranger. Clint Eastwood plays the stranger's surviving brother, known as Pardner. Together, they establish a mining camp that grows into a chaotic town. Jean Seberg plays Elizabeth, a woman who becomes part of an unusual household with both men. The arrangement creates jealousy, affection, and confusion, while the mining settlement expands around them. Marvin's performance of Wandrin' Star became the movie's most famous musical moment. His rough voice sounds nothing like a traditional Broadway singer, but that difference gives the scene an unexpected sadness. Eastwood also sings, years before becoming permanently associated with silent, controlled toughness. The wildest scene comes near the ending. Miners have dug tunnels beneath the buildings to collect gold dust falling through the floors. Their underground work weakens the entire settlement. During a celebration, the town begins collapsing into the earth. Saloons, streets, and expensive sets disappear into the holes created by greed. The original $10 million budget reportedly doubled to around $20 million. Remote Oregon filming, weather problems, transportation costs, and the construction of a complete mining town drove expenses upward. The movie earned strong ticket sales and around $14.5 million in domestic rentals. Yet those returns were insufficient for such an enormous production. Paramount had created a hit-sized gross attached to a bomb-sized cost. As the town collapses on screen, the metaphor becomes almost too perfect. Hollywood's musical empire was also falling into a hole it had spent years digging. Number 1. Hello, Dolly, 1969. Hello, Dolly was one of the highest-grossing movies of its season. It won 3 Academy Awards, received a Best Picture nomination, and later became profitable. Yet its gigantic production cost turned that impressive performance into one of old Hollywood's clearest symbols of financial excess. Barbra Streisand plays Dolly Levi, a confident widow and professional matchmaker. She travels to Yonkers to arrange a marriage for wealthy merchant Horace Vandergelder, played by Walter Matthau. Secretly, Dolly has already selected Horace as the next husband for herself. Meanwhile, Horace's employees Cornelius and Barnaby escape to New York for an adventure. They meet hat shop owner Irene Malloy and her assistant Minnie, creating misunderstandings that eventually bring every character together at the Harmonia Gardens restaurant. The title number is the movie's unforgettable scene. Dolly enters at the top of a grand staircase, wearing a glittering golden gown. Waiters line the steps as she slowly returns to the restaurant where she was once celebrated. Louis Armstrong appears, and the two performers exchange warm greetings while the entire room welcomes Dolly home. It is joyful, beautifully staged, and almost impossibly lavish. The production budget began near $10 million but grew beyond $22 million, with some estimates placing the final cost above $25 million. A massive parade used thousands of extras, more than 100 animals, 7 cameras, and a specially constructed New York street. The movie earned $33.2 million domestically and substantial worldwide rentals. But theater shares, advertising, rights payments, and production costs meant Fox did not immediately recover its investment. While inexpensive films such as Easy Rider captured the new generation, Fox had spent a fortune recreating 1890s New York. Hello, Dolly was not artistically empty or publicly ignored. It was simply the wrong kind of extravagance at the end of the wrong era. These movies did not fail because Hollywood lacked talent. They failed because the studios kept making yesterday's entertainment at tomorrow's prices. By the end of the 1960s, younger filmmakers, smaller productions, and riskier stories were replacing the old system. Which bomb deserved better? And which one wasted every dollar? Share your answer below, like the video, and subscribe for more forgotten stories from the most fascinating era in movie history.